And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special Northland Sports Page. Maybe one of our first couple of evening shows, but certainly our first as it happens type show. Yes, it'll be recorded when you see it, but we are watching the NFL Draft live. It's Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook, Topher Davis. I've introduced everybody, but I'm going to feed it over to Dave Cook because everybody likes holidays. Everybody celebrates their own in different ways. This might be Dave Cook's biggest one.
Yeah, this is the fun one, Brian. This is the NFL draft is one of those days that are circled on the corner. And it'll be circled on the calendar for next year, probably tomorrow morning. This is one of my favorite sporting events of the year. It's one of my favorite events of the year, and our very first draft pick while we've had the show going now is Tua Tagovailoa. So we will know exactly how long that Tua's been in the NFL by how many years we've been doing this.
Now, I have to give Dave a ton of credit there because in the history of the Northland Sports Page, which I don't know if we consider this the Northland Sports Page or some sort of NFL Draft Special Edition show, the number of names that Dave has butchered is an astronomical number. Yet Tua, and I'm just going to stick with calling him Tua for my own safety, you can tell what kind of draft bobo Dave Cook is because Topher Davis, that was smooth as silk. He made Tua Tagovailoa, I don't even know if I got it right, sound as simple as Topher Davis.
Yeah, he just flew right through that one. It wasn't a problem at all. It was pretty impressive. I mean, he's no Ronnie Rodriguez. It was impressive there, Dave.
It's going to get worse. Just that's probably the highlight of the night when it comes to names.
Well, and speaking of the highlight of the night, we join you as pick 6 is on the clock. It belongs to the Chargers. I got to wonder if the Tua pick reshaped where they're going or if it just tells you they're going to the other quarterback because we don't know how much they trust in Tyrod Taylor. But we should recap the 5 picks that have now taken place. Number 1, obviously, Joe Burrow. Number 2, Chase Young. Number 3, the cornerback, Dave. We were surprised and we actually applauded the year of the cat, the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, the Okudah kid is a long, tall, very talented, played at a high-end program cornerback. Detroit never seems to make the right picks, and even if he doesn't pan out, he's the right pick.
And then, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right, Dave. That was the right pick for the Lions. There, they made the move to you talked about guys' jobs possibly being on the line. They decided to do what they got to do in the front office to take the best player available and do what they can to move forward.
So here's a question, though. Anyways, number 4 was the Thomas kid, the offensive tackle from Georgia that went to the Giants.
Now, wait a minute. I'm not going to let you be that dismissive of him because as it happened before we were on here together, you were pretty rah-rah on how good of a tackle he could be because we knew he wouldn't slide to, say, 22 or 25 for the purple. But we would have loved if he would have. So I'm gonna make you give him a little more applause than you did.
More than that?
Yeah,
so
yes.
There are 4 offensive tackles, and depending on how you rank them on pro-ready or most upside. Thomas is the most pro-ready, right? He'll start next year. But what you see is what you get. In 5 years from now, it might be the Wirfs kid or the Wills kid or even Becton from Louisville who might end up being the best tackle. But if you're protecting your investments right now, I think Thomas makes the most sense.
Well, and go figure, Topher, because the New York media jumped all over it right away. All we did was peek at Twitter after the Giants picked. And I'm sure there are some people who are thrilled, but they're never as loud as those that aren't. I don't know about New York in terms of do they appreciate anything. They may have a great tackle, but it's apparently not what the fans wanted.
Well, exactly. And that's kind of a draft tradition like no other is New York Giants and Jets fans booing whatever pick they seem to make. Unfortunately for the front office, it's not happening live at Radio City Music Hall this year, so they don't have to deal with it there. But yeah, that's New York fans is a group that just won't necessarily work. They don't appreciate the draft picks quite the way Dave does. That's for sure.
It's hard.
Wow, who does? Let's be honest.
When things are built up, so you're excited, and then they do the safe thing. That's sometimes that's not the most fun, right? You want them to take the risky, sexy pick. Instead, you pick the guy who's gonna, be fine for the next 10 years.
See, I just thought you related that to this show because you were excited to do a live stream for the draft tonight, which we wanted to do. But technologically speaking, we couldn't do it. So here we are recording again, doing the safe thing. I hope you're still enjoying yourself, Dave Cook.
100%. I get to hang out and watch a draft with people. This is fun.
Well, and I thought you'd be just awestruck that you are watching the draft with me because not because you want to necessarily spend time with me. You don't have a shortage of that even in quarantine. But you should be surprised that you have me watching the draft.
Well, here's the thing about that, Topher. The only time I'm with Brian and he's watching the draft is when the window's down in the car. So yes, I'm pretty excited that that we're able to do this.
Well, and to be fair, the only time Topher's with me for a draft, if it's not our fantasy football league, it's usually a draft that is preceded by Michelob Golden and then light on the end of it.
I got no comment on that at all, Brian. If Michelob wants to talk to us later about that, certainly can get in contact with us.
Absolutely. We will take the sponsorship. So let's be proud of the Miami Dolphins because this is a proud franchise with Don Shula, Larry Zonka. You can go Dan Marino, Mark Clayton, Mark Duper, that group. The problem is this team hasn't been very good since those last three names. Hopefully, Tua, you don't want to call him the next coming of Dan Marino because two very different quarterbacks, but they're still craving the type of stability that Dan Marino gave them.
Well, the thing is Tua is probably not going to start this year. They're going to let him get healthy, but they've got 5 more picks in the first and second rounds, or 5 total, and then so they'll be able to bring in a running back or a wide receiver or a couple offensive linemen, whatever they got to do, and then Tua will be ready to roll next year. The interesting one now is the Chargers. If you're the Chargers, do you pick a quarterback who maybe isn't the greatest? Brian, we talked about this before. Do you draft your offensive tackle now and then go sign Cam Newton?
I have to think that the pick right in front of him may have made that decision because Herbert is still out there. But do you go for him at 6? Do you trust Tyrod Taylor enough to go elsewhere if Cam sweepstakes don't work in your favor? Or do you assume now that you lost out on Tua that you make the best run at Cam to go do it? Either way, the LA Chargers, and I'm proud of myself for saying it correctly, that team needs a fan base. You need a name to bring them in. If you're drafting a tackle here, no matter how much you need them, an offensive tackle doesn't bring fans in. So you better go get Cam Newton if you draft a tackle here.
Right, and we've seen what it did to Gettleman in New York as far as fans. But the funny thing is when you win, you're just thrilled that they made that draft 4 years ago, right? When we did the draft the Vikings, the first thing we did was figure out which offensive line had the best tackles.
That's completely correct. The other piece of that is, do you trust Tyrod Taylor enough? Because if you look at the Chargers supporting cast, it's pretty good. Whoever's playing quarterback is dealing with Eckler in the backfield, throwing to Keenan Allen, hopefully. Hunter Henry's pretty good at tight end. The other 2 wide receivers are quite good. I know because I had half the Chargers on my fantasy team and I did okay. But it's not a bad situation to be new in. Question is, do you want to be Herbert new in that?
So here's the question that I want to put on top of that. So if you're the Chargers and you think that you'll be okay in a year or 2 and you might not be great this year, do you not take the quarterback in order to take a shot at Mr. Lawrence from Clemson next year?
Well, I think we just got the answer to our question because I'm looking at the TV and the pick is in for the Chargers and Justin Herbert is on his phone.
Yep, I see it now. All right, so that's an interesting pick because Herbert's got a lot of talents and he's got a lot of people that don't think he's as good as this draft number is going to be. This is one of those where we're going to look back, and if he's good, Brian, you're going to roll your eyes and say that draft is stupid. And if he's not any good, we're going to look at it and say, well, why can't they draft right? This is kind of a risky pick.
Well, again, and I'll go to Topher here for a second. I think they're putting butts in the seats. And I think you had to do it by getting a big name when you're that high up in the draft. Because if this team plays to its potential, they shouldn't be this high in the draft pretty regularly.
No, you're absolutely right. They picked the guy here to try to get something going there with the crowd, to get some excitement with their fan base, because they're trying to find a way to fill the stadiums. Hopefully we can get fans in the stadiums. That's going to be a whole nother issue, but trying to figure that out as well.
That'll be just nice if they'll fill the 30,000 seat stadium and not give them any extra pressure.
Absolutely correct. So, Dave, let me go another direction with you. Give me your Justin Herbert synopsis real quick, because I'll be completely honest. I watched him once because I rooted for him to take care of the Badgers during their bowl, and he did. So I liked him for a day. I didn't know much besides that.
Well, he's interesting because he came back for his senior year, to Oregon when everybody kind of thought he was going to be the number 1 quarterback last year. So they run the RPO offense that Bobby Acosta likes so much. He's 6'6". He's a big kid. He's got a really nice arm. But they say he's just a super nice guy and maybe isn't one of those alpha male leaders. So he's going to have to go into a situation that has leadership already there and just let him play quarterback. And that's not a bad thing, but if your culture's not set up for it, it can be hard.
Right. Topher, does he have an advantage? I keep coming to you when it comes to big city media. Apparently, you're big city out of the three of us. Does he have an advantage? We just talked about how ruthless the New York media can be. Obviously, LA shouldn't be known for being any better, but the LA Chargers are still a team that Los Angeles doesn't pay attention to. We just focused on that.
Right, exactly. The Los Angeles. It's going to be interesting how that all plays out this year with the new stadium opening up for both the Rams and the Chargers, and how it all plays out. Obviously, the Rams have more history in Los Angeles, so them are more of Los Angeles' team, where the Chargers still feel like they should be in San Diego, especially in Southern California. There's a lot of fans from LA that didn't like the Chargers because they were San Diego's team. So.
Right.
So it's interesting to see the way that will play out. It's probably trying to find a way to create their own niche within the market, but we'll see. We'll see what they can do.
That's a tough spot to put a quarterback without, those alpha tendencies to go into a market where you may or may not be the favored son and have to try to make headway when all you really want to do is play ball and be left alone.
It's definitely a difficult spot. Yeah, well, I don't know. It's a difficult spot to be put in, especially when you might be drafted above where you should have been projected to be, because that's a lot more pressure that goes on a guy. And we know what fan bases can do when quarterbacks, especially, have that kind of expectations on them due to a higher draft pick than they probably should have had. And it could end up burning up a career a lot faster than should have played up.
Dave, how's this for a perfect segue then? Because we're on pick number 7. And you look behind Topher, there's a jersey number 7 over his shoulder, and draft expectations ruining a career. There's a great example. Derek
Brown.
That's the pick that went to the Panthers, but number 7 behind Topher's Christian Ponder. He never got the chance to be a favorite son in Minnesota. He was maligned pretty much from the beginning, save maybe 1 week against the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah. But I want to go to Ponder for a second, because if you look at the Panthers, you go to another guy that was just kind of the assumed favorite son awfully fast, and he's the guy who got the starting keys to the car now. He's Teddy Bridgewater, the starting quarterback in Carolina, paid big money. He's been, not completely out of football, but not the main guy in football for a really long time. Yep. What do you make of the Carolina Panthers as a team?
Well, I think Teddy going to Carolina makes sense because he's stable, right? And the coach in Carolina is going to preach that stability, stability, stability. So that makes sense to me. What they're gonna do as far go forward, if you got Teddy, you got to know a couple things. He's not going to throw the ball downfield, right? He's going to give you a chance to win late. So you got to put guys around him that can get him to that spot. You got to keep him protected for starters.
We've been talking about expectations. Does Teddy get a little bit of a pass, or at least some help, in the sense that, yes, it's Carolina's first year sans Cam Newton as a team, but he's actually filling in for Kyle Allen. It's not like Cam Newton left and Teddy Bridgewater's got to be Cam Newton. He's probably going to at least be better than what they had.
Yes, I think you're 100% right. I think Bridgewater, let's be honest. We all know my fandom of Teddy Bridgewater, and I want him to set into a spot that's good for him. And this really is good for him because nobody expects Carolina to win the whole thing next year, right? So he can just get comfortable and get into that groove. And then next year, if they do a nice job drafting and get some additional parts around him and some defensive parts, he's got a chance to win. And that's important.
Can we take a second and look at that division at quarterback? Because if you look at it, all of a sudden, Matt Ryan is kind of the him of that group, because Teddy got a big deal. Tom Brady is the headliner. Drew Brees is on the fast track for the Hall of Fame. Hello, NFC South. We see you.
Yeah, no doubt. That quarterback, that's a pretty heavy-duty quarterback division, that's for sure.
And guess which division the Vikings play the whole thing this coming season?
Outstanding.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Speaking of the Vikings, they pick in another 18 picks or so. That 18 picks will be their second one. 15 picks will be their first. But I hope everybody's got whatever caffeinated beverage they prefer, because it's 10 after 8. We're 7 picks in, so we're averaging 7 picks an hour. Will the Vikes pick before 10 o'clock? I'm going to guess
Let's
no.
let's hope so. But that's one of those prop bets we could have, right?
Yeah, it's interesting to see the way it all plays out. Whether or not the timing of these things. I think that's part of it too. I mean, with the teams with the later picks, they're up way past their bedtimes.
So I'm watching. I got the Bleacher Report going on in the background, right? And if you're a Charger fan, something that just happened is something you're really not very happy with, and that's they're running Derek Brown's highlights from Auburn, and he had a strip sack on Justin Herbert. I'm fairly sure that's something you didn't need to see if you're a Charger fan. The new quarterback just got stripped by the guy drafted after him.
Well, you're okay that at least he's out of your division then.
Yes.
You gotta take silver linings as much as you can. So again, it's our NFL draft special. What we're gonna do is we're gonna record various segments and we'll be posting them to YouTube. Thank you again for Dave Cook and Topher Davis's time to be part of this. But I don't think getting Dave Cook's time tonight was really all that difficult because
Nope.
you have said basically for a couple of months that this is your night.
Yeah, this is, some of the guys we've gotten to meet on the NSP and the Northland Sports page over the years, some of them are to blame for this, by the way. I remember sitting on pins and needles when Keith Millard was drafted and then jumping up in the ceiling and yelling, and my dad coming down and saying, all right, so seriously, you're cheering on some defensive tackle from Washington? Come on. It was like, no, he can do this and this and this. And then, you're proven right. And all of a sudden it starts to get, India a little bit.
I will tell you this. My worst cheering or bemoaning draft pick moment was when Randy Moss was selected. I wasn't upset, but they already had Chris Carter and Jake Reed. And I was thinking about how many places this team could improve. And I was at Winona State as a student. And another student came out to me on the basketball court outside our dorm and said, you missed the Vikings pick. And I repeated some expletives that I won't hear. But I said, okay, who'd they pick? And they said, Randy Moss, the big-time wide receiver from Marshall. And I went, why? And I just kind of left it at that. Mind you, I was thrilled by, say, week one. But that's the part of the draft that I don't get into. And you and I have been round and round on this, Dave. For every Deion Sanders, you're going to find a Chris Cook. For every Randy Moss, you're going to find a Troy Williamson. I don't like to sit and gauge by crowd reactions at the draft because I don't think that tells you either. But I don't get as excited as you because I just go, well, if everything that I read is true, we did well. But then there's 8 million guys you can read, and they all have different takes on somebody. You could go Tobin on the bit and go, who the bleep is Mel Kiper Jr.?
I like reading them all just to get different takes on it. I don't see them as necessarily opposite, just another point of view that I can use to make my own, point of view. So we had Robert Griffith this summer talk about his first experience with Randy Moss. Do you remember that story, Brian? Do you have that one at your fingertips?
I do remember that story. It was Robert was hoisting a beverage at Namaji, but he basically said, this kid's different. We just played the best defense we possibly could on this kid, and he still beat us.
Yeah, that was the first day, right?
The proof was in the pudding on day one.
Yep.
He came up to tear the league up, and he did it. Yeah,
that was a great story where he said we were all lined up. Oh, big deal. This kid played for Marshall. Oh, he put up 200 yards against Army. What, big deal. And then first play of practice, it was like, yeah, okay, this guy's the best guy we've ever seen.
Well, and Randy Moss is worth mentioning in this draft because it's another draft where the Vikings might look wide receiver. But the wide receiver class is deep. Let's just put it out there. Do you want them to or don't you want them to? Because it's a need, but for me, it's third on the list.
Wide receiver? I think I do think they need to draft a wide receiver, Brian, but I don't think they need to draft.
But I'm talking about tonight.
Yeah, no, I don't think they need to draft one tonight. I think it's almost imperative they come back with at least one cornerback. I asked you guys earlier what you would think if they drafted two, and I kind of agree with you, but I'm not sure that I would be terribly disappointed if we came back with two top-end cornerbacks.
I wouldn't either, but it's one of those positions not unlike wide receiver, and Topher, I'll get to you in 30 seconds or less here, but it's one of those positions that I don't want a bundle of inexperience at. You've already got it the way the roster's currently construed. I would draft one and sign one that's at least played somewhere. We can talk about Dre Kirkpatrick forever because he's out there and Zim's a cornerback whisperer, but I'm going to go with the second half of that thought. If he's a whisperer and you give him someone who's at least played in the league at that position, he can do something with it. I prefer that over two people that have not. And the Cardinals, I believe,
drafted
just
Isaiah
made their
Simmons.
selection.
Yeah, they drafted Isaiah Simmons, the Swiss Army knife from Clemson.
There you go. Interesting
All right,
pick
so
there.
there you go.
Carl.
But back to the Vikes with receivers and corners. So
Yeah, I was with the corners. I think a lot of it plays out with. I feel like the Vikings are going to try to be as active as possible today in making potential trades in which they might acquire some assets that address some of their needs outside of the draft, and that might go to getting a player with more experience, like you were talking about, Brian, and that obviously shifts around their different needs. Obviously, there was a lot of alleged steam around the Vikings getting the big offensive lineman out of Washington. And if they were able to get that trade done, that would obviously change their draft strategy because that would be a spot they wouldn't look to. If that stays open, I think they're going to have to try to see who's available in tackle positions. And I also think that, I mean, it's hard to tell at those spots. What, maybe they trade back there. Rick's the king at trading back and try and do accumulate draft picks as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the next couple hours.
I can't even come close to disagreeing with that. Topher just basically gave the synopsis that I wanted to give what the Vikings should do.
I agree 100% with what Topher said. He makes a lot of really good points. The name that I want to put out there, though, and I mentioned it to you guys again earlier today, and there's a guy from Michigan, a center guard named Cesar Ruiz. And if you're reaching for an offensive tackle that you're not sure is going to be good this year, and if you're Zimmer and Spielman and you're in your last year of your deal and you can get a guy come in and start a guard right away, he's going to be really tempting.
But see, I don't disagree with that either, but I think you've got a chance to have a guard that has big league pedigree, to use a baseball term. All you got to do is move Riley Reif into that position where he belongs. And you go ahead and you draft your tackle. Now, I know a rookie tackle is a risky proposition, but the Vikes have done it and albeit done well with it before. Brian McKinney's tenure here is not viewed glowingly, but it's mainly because of what he did when he wasn't playing football. When he did play football, he was pretty good. Phil Lodeholt, same story. You can draft and mold tackles.
Yeah, Lodeholt.
The guard position's been a wreck.
Lodeholt's a good example because they got him in the second round. But McKinney was the number 8 pick overall. And if we were drafting there, I'd agree with you 100%. But we're drafting, you're talking about the Jackson kid from USC, who's a really good story, but he's not that great of an offensive tackle right now. The kid from Houston, Jones has had 4 offensive line coaches in 4 years. So he with some coaching might be a plus. But I just think at that point you're taking some risks when there might be a little bit more ready to go starters in some other positions.
I want to take a break from the Vikings for a second because the Jaguars are on the clock. What do you think that their thought process is like right now? Because there was some rumor that if Tua was available still, which he isn't, he's in Florida, but elsewhere in Miami, that the Jags, despite all the Minshew hype, might have looked at it. What do you see them doing now?
Well, I think that Minshew he's gonna have to follow the Brady trajectory because he was a 6th round pick. They're going to look to replace him until he proves to them that he's not replaceable. You know what I mean? I think that this is a sneaky spot for one of the wide receivers. However, I don't think that's the direction that they're going to go right away. There's a couple of guys. There's Kinlaw, the defensive tackle from South Carolina.
Dave loves the 3-tech.
Yep, 3-tech is an important spot in that, and they could use that. They could use if you're worried about your quarterback, there's always a good reason to draft a good young offensive tackle at the beginning of the draft. So that's what I'd say. I'd say they'll probably Kinlaw or one of the tackles with maybe a swing at one of the wide receivers being a distant third.
Well, let me ask you this as a follow-up question. Does the offensive line in Jacksonville become even more important because we're not totally sure who they're blocking for? Because earlier this week it was Leonard Fournette, very much expendable, get him out of there. Now what happens?
Yeah, when you got a guy like Fournette who you already know he can carry the load, and he caught the ball last year. I'm not quite sure why, unless you get offered something amazing, I'm not sure why you get rid of somebody that offers your young quarterback, the nookie blankie, as they say on Topher's favorite station.
Everyone's favorite station.
I call exactly. The Northland Sports Page makes it everybody's favorite station.
Absolutely.
Saturday mornings, we hope eventually. For now, it's YouTube all the time.
Absolutely.
We will do Saturday morning as usual as well. Bit of a somber note for what we'll normally cover there because, of course, today announced spring sports will not be as we expected, but still tough to take for a lot of good athletes.
Yeah, it really is. It's just a bad thing. And I know that the adults in the room are doing a good thing. Oh, CJ Henderson might be the guy, the cornerback from Florida. Anyways, the seniors are going through something none of us have gone through, and you see the leadership out there saying, "Hey, you know what? You can get through this too. We know you'll be all right." But it's tough. It's sad to see that. It's sad to see these kids have to go through that.
Well, and I think the thing is, and Topher, I'm going to lean to you here. We can all, pretend to relate, and some of us do because we work with them, relate to high school athletes. And to some extent, we can do that. Yet, whenever you're going through something that's difficult, it's always good to lean on someone who's been there, done that. There's nobody that has been there, done that in a situation like this before. So we can pat them on the back as a group, but we're not going through it.
No, it's got to be difficult, obviously, for the student athletes, especially, the spring sports really didn't get a chance to begin even. And so it's difficult, especially for certain athletes that maybe the only sport they play is a spring sport and they've been gearing up for it all year long. And now they don't even get their opportunity. And so it's got to be frustrating, obviously, for the senior class who just saw potentially their athletic careers come to an end without another day. They didn't have the opportunity to know they were wearing their jersey for the last time. They never got that chance. And so that's a hard thing to have happen. Obviously, it's for the best. It's for the greater good for everybody. And so we certainly applaud the sacrifices that are being made for that to have happened. But it's, obviously heart goes out to all those student athletes and even, everyone involved, the coaches. There's certain coaches within the area that haven't coached their new teams yet.
Absolutely. Talk about the baseball carousel. Joe Wicklund, Bill over in Hermantown, Nick taking over, Marshall now because Joe went over to Denfeld. So you think of baseball in this area, and it was going to be very good. By the way, the guy nobody mentioned, of course, I'm going to, Chris Silliandal's East team was going to be darn good. They were loaded at pitching. Baseball in Duluth we've talked about this even last year with the state prominence they had. Baseball and Duluth are not synonymous because for us to say on April 23rd that spring sports haven't started yet, usually that's Mother Nature's fault, not
Yep.
COVID-19's fault.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just something that, they didn't have senior day, right? They, like Topher said, they didn't have their last home game. All these things that they didn't have, those are memories that we're fortunate enough to have. And like you said, Brian, baseball being uniquely good in Duluth for how short our season is, and then the seniors don't get a chance to take a swing.
Well, and I still even think of, and I keep going back to this, and it's not just because I enjoy Dave very much, but I still think of the winter teams that didn't get to finish. I talked to CJ Osuchiku today, and he's still bumming about the state basketball championship that may well have gone to his girls. And it's tough for the winter coaches to still swallow this. They've had a month to, quote, get over it. Nobody's gotten over anything because we haven't gotten to go anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. And, it's tough for a coach like CJ, whose kids were on such a roll at the state tournament, to have the wheels just pulled out from underneath you. The spring kids, they in the back of their minds, they've been thinking, you know what, this isn't going to play out well for us. But CJ's team, man alive, with everything going in their direction at the end, and to have it just, oh, hey, by the way, instead of leaving your hotel room to get in the bus to go to the gym, you're going to get in the bus and go home because we've stopped this. I mean, ugh.
Right. It's almost like somebody forgot to make the hotel reservations for the rest of the weekend.
Yes.
But you're right about CJ Henderson. He's just gone to the Jaguars. We are continuing with our NFL draft special with the guys from the Northland Sports page, Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook, Topher Davis. I want to tie what we just talked about back into the draft because I'm also getting a lot of text messages saying, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how much I needed this. It's not on the field. It's not a difference in schedule. This is going as scheduled. That's exactly what people needed. For a night, we're pretending to an extent that sports is normal because the NFL, for the most part, has been able to be that way because it doesn't start for another 5 months.
Yeah, perfect timing, right? But the draft is, you're right. The NFL draft is something that, believe it or not, more than just I look forward to. And so to have something that you're looking forward to actually happen on time, yeah, it is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it is, especially to have, some live new sports going on. The WNBA did their draft last weekend. Now the NFL draft is something that a lot of people look forward to each and every year, specifically looking at you, Dave. And to have this be one of the few things that isn't being canceled. Obviously, it's affected having to go remote and do these meetings like this, but to me, it's almost taking it more back towards its roots when it was more of a conference call type situation anyway. So
Yeah.
I think it's just fine, and people are loving the having their getaway, I guess, for the evening.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. This is the normalcy here is a big deal. I'm really glad CJ Henderson just got drafted. He was a guy I was worried was going to end up bubbling up towards the Vikings. CJ Henderson is a great cover guy, right? He can cover guys left to right, front to back all day long. He don't like to tackle. You know, it's easy. It's kind of like a wide receiver that is really good at going and getting the long ball and making great touchdown catches, but won't catch the ball over the, won't catch it in traffic when you need 10 yards. CJ's reputation is styling. You know, he can play cornerback. He just doesn't like to hit anything.
So wait a minute. Until you gave the wide receiver comparison, Topher, didn't Dave just describe Deion Sanders to a T? Isn't that what you want to hear?
Yes. Yes, you know what?
He's great. He's got style. He can go up and get the ball. He doesn't want to hit anybody. Sounds like prime time to me.
No, that's
100% true, Brian. You just what you need to do to make the point is name me the second person that's made an NFL career doing that.
Wow, that's fairly true because Darryl Green was the only guy as fast, but he would hit. The only hitting Deion did was for the Braves.
It's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. No, but he's the big guy that you could really get sucked into because of all the flash plays and miss the fact that the other 35 plays in that game he didn't do much.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, I don't know how Deion would appreciate those comments either, since you're talking about a Florida guy and comparing him to the greatest of all time from Florida State.
Well, it's about time that Florida State took some grief in this trio. They've given enough love for several decades to come. Interesting here, the Browns pick is in. The Browns were rumored to be moving just about anywhere.
Now they're picking Becton or Willis. It's got to be one of those two guys. Probably Willis because he was the one that was supposed to go earlier. But Becton is the one with the most high, with the most ceiling. I mean, 6'7", 370. But
there you
Willis
go.
is a stud.
It's in. It's Jedrick Wills, the offensive tackle from Alabama.
Yep.
Jedrick Wills Jr. That's the other thing. We didn't touch on this because we didn't start our show tonight, our special on picks 1 through 5. Basically because outside of Tua, we didn't see too many surprises. Detroit and New York kind of threw a monkey wrench in the top 5, but Tua was really when we said, okay, let's go. Let's start analyzing this. The interesting thing, though, that we didn't touch on is almost every other pick tonight, as it goes on, could have Alabama or LSU tagged at the end of it because, my goodness, they are going to make up most of the NFL newbies, if you will, by the end of the night or by the end of the weekend for sure.
I wonder, it'll be interesting at the end of the night to say, okay, between Clemson, LSU, and Alabama and Ohio State, how many players out of those 4 make up the 32 picks in the first round?
I think that's going to be go ahead.
The funny thing with Wills is, he protected Tua's backside, right? He was his blind side blocker, but Tua's a lefty. And so Wills is a right tackle. And it's always interesting when you try to take a guy who's played on the right his whole career and try to move him to the left. And this is really early to draft a right tackle. So,
Dave, I'm going to let you continue here in a second, but one of my favorite phrases that you've always used is adult in the room, and you've always kind of claimed that title for yourself. I just want it noted because the video only shows who's ever speaking at the time. But when you said protecting Tua's backside, the non-adults in the room, Topher and I both giggled. I just wanted you to know that.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of an adorable little turn of the phrase. But yeah, the kid's a legitimate NFL tackle. I just wonder if you're going to be able to make that move to the left tackle because everything you do is opposite, right? And so that's obviously he's the 10th pick in the draft, so he ought to be able to do that. But it is a little wrinkle into the draft.
Absolutely. So indeed, he is the 10th pick in the draft. So that is picks 6 through 10. So what we'll do is we'll make that this segment. We'll take a brief break. Even the Jets got 4.5 minutes. We'll probably take a little less than that. We'll come back and we'll do picks 11 through 15. We're going to be here with you at least until pick 25 tonight. Yeah. We'll see if we pay a little homage to the Packer fans and go through 30. We'll see how late it is. Dave's got to go to bed, But we'll be back shortly with pick number 11. Stay with us.